I'm Father Champagne with Mercy Minutes. We're looking at the works of mercy, and today the spiritual works of mercy. The corporal take care of the body. The spiritual works of mercy deal with the spirit. There are counsel the doubtful, instruct the ignorant, admonish sinners, comfort the afflicted, forgive offenses, bear wrongs patiently, pray for the living and the dead. These also can be occasions for gaining the plenary indulgence. Counsel the doubtful. Many people are discouraged and they're having doubts about their faith or about themselves, and we can spend time to encourage them. Instruct the ignorant. This is an education, particularly about the faith. Many persons don't know about the sacrifice of the Mass, grace, confession, and we can instruct them. Comfort the afflicted. Certainly those who are suffering, mourning or death and grieving. To admonish sinners. This is difficult, but to love someone enough to tell them the truth about where their life is heading and the difficulties that they may be experiencing by a life of sin. Bear wrongs patiently. A lot of times we are accused of things that we didn't do, or we're trying to admonish someone and they turn on us. We can bear those patiently and be exercising a spiritual work of mercy. Pray for the living and the dead. Obviously praying for one another, praying for those in trouble, but also spending time to go through the obituaries and offer plenary indulgences for those who die, praying for them in our rosary and our masses. These are the spiritual works of mercy which we should be practicing at all times, but especially in this year of mercy.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for Catholics Today. We're happy to be joined by newly or about to be newly ordained priests, Michael Richard, Joel Falk, and Alexander Albert. And so we have a lot of time this morning to visit with them, get to know them a little bit better, and to find out a little bit more about the path that they have taken that has brought them to be priests of Jesus Christ. And so I'd like to start with Alexander. Deacon Alexander, tell us a little bit about where you grew up, maybe your family, how many siblings you have, where you fit in the lineup, those kinds of things, and your practice of the faith. How did the idea of priesthood first come to mind, and how did that progress until you decided to enter into seminary?
Well, I was born and raised in Kenner, Louisiana. Raised Catholic. I have two brothers, one older, he's about 5 years older than me, and the younger brother is about a year and a half behind me. And growing up, I went to Catholic school for 8 years, for the last 8 years. And I always knew that there was something I wanted to do, something I needed to do, something I was supposed to do. But I didn't know what it was until I got to college. And that's where the idea of priesthood became very clear. And that's when I chose to enter. Mm-hmm.
So during college, you began to seek out the assistance of a priest. How did that develop? For those who are watching, maybe don't know what the process is like,
Right.
How do you go from thinking about priesthood to being in seminary and to being 2 days away from being ordained a priest as I sit here with you guys right now?
Well, that's quite a journey. It starts with thinking and praying about priesthood, and then of course talking to a priest. That's always the best first step. Talk to a priest. What was that like? What's it mean to become a priest? And through the example and guidance of Father Chester Arsenault, who was pastor at Our Lady of Wisdom when I was at UL in college. After about 3 years in college, I decided to go ahead and enter seminary. Spent 3 years in seminary at St. Joseph Seminary College, St. Ben's as we all call it. And then 4 years at Notre Dame Seminary in New Orleans. And here I am, just graduated from that and getting ready to be ordained. And a whole lot of little things and some big things happened along the way.
Yeah.
But it's been a great journey.
Great. And Deacon Falk, could you share a little bit about your own path to priesthood?
Yeah, it's been quite a scenic path with a lot of bumps and curves along the way that were quite unexpected. I first started thinking about seminary late high school, got serious about it kind of in college when I was involved with the Catholic Student Center, the Newman Club there. It was encouraged, and through a lot of priests that I knew, kind of really gently giving that encouragement, some less gentle, some more firmly pushing. And then finally decided to go and entered St. Ben's, the collegiate level, transferring from USL at the time, back in '97. and then after a couple of years there, I moved on to theology studies. And that's where mine kind of really began to take its bumps and curves along the way, with a couple of different bouts with leukemia. During the second bout with leukemia, both about a year long, is when I decided to step out of seminary. And I was out for 10 years, kind of the pastoral decade, as I like to refer to it sometimes. But 10 years of good growth and formation. Finished my master's in theology, went on to teach high school religion for a few years before coming back in around 2013, and classmated with these two guys.
Right.
Had to keep them apart.
Yeah,
between them.
that's right. They couldn't be alone. You had to
They
Needed
add the
They needed a
perfection of
third.
three. Yeah.
Well, it's the rule of three. And Alexander was sure that nobody else would join them in their class, and so once he had said that, then I had to come in to ruin his prediction.
His certainty. His
So
certainty.
so give my life to that. No sooner was I back in theology that the cancer, the chemo treatments from the cancer, the leukemia, had caught up to my heart. My heart began to fail on me. Ended up needing a heart transplant. So I've had some major medical issues during my times in seminary. And that's been a very formative aspect of my seminary journey.
Wow.
It's definitely colored it and made it very scenic and very filled with the bumps and curves. But that's the way life is. That's the way I'm sure the priestly vocation will be as well. And it does bring you closer to the cross and closer to Christ. And it's definitely something that the priesthood is really all about.
Yeah, John Paul II called the priesthood a gift and mystery, right? It's not something we deserve. It's not something we fully understand. We receive it. We enter into it. And that reliance on the Lord, certainly, that requirement of relying on the Lord certainly is something that he's taught you very well during your 19 years of formation, right?
Right.
So,
You pray for the gift of a new heart, but you don't need it quite so literally.
That's right. Well, Deacon Richard, whenever Deacon Falk began his journey in 1997, what grade were you in?
Ooh, I think I was in fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
Fourth
And
grade.
At that point, were you already filling out applications for seminary?
I was not filling
Okay.
out applications to seminary in '97. No, it took me a little longer than that. I thought my road was long and windy, but nothing compared
Right.
to Deacon Falk. So I was one of those kind of longtime discerners. Once I started thinking about it in high school, it took a while to get to the point. But once I started thinking about it, I made a lot of retreats, and the diocese allows a lot of opportunities for young men to go and discern at different opportunities, retreats, times, a few days away, days, different things. And so I did a lot of those over a course of probably 3 or 4 years, and I think the vocation director was asking me every time when I was going to apply, and I never thought it was right. And it took until really my final year at LSU, when I was in college, 21 years old, for the Lord really to break through and convince me very strongly that I should enter seminary.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good point for those watching who don't really know much about the process, that we don't discern on our own. The church discerns as well. The church provides a means for us to discern. And so, we begin with the idea, with a thought, maybe the suggestion of someone else. Then we approach those who know more than we do. We seek their wisdom. We seek their guidance. We read good material. We go on retreats. And we kind of sit with that experience, right? Yeah. What was I thinking? What was I feeling? What do I want? And God works through those things, those thoughts, feelings, and desires during those experimentations, those experiences of testing the call. And then if it seems like we're still attracted to the call, if it seems like the answer to the question, do you want me to be a priest, Jesus, is not a clear no, and it doesn't go away, then at some point we do have to step out of, the discernment zone in a certain sense and actually do something, right, to begin to test that call. So that's what you did in seminary, and we hear that word a lot, seminary, seminarians, those studying to be priests, but a lot of people don't really know what that entails, what seminary is like. So maybe we can just spend a few minutes talking about that. What is formation all about? What is it for? What is the structure of the house? What does the structure of the program look like? Maybe Deacon Albert can get us started with that.
It's kind of like a bunch of guys living in a dorm. Some ways like a fraternity, except that we all want to be priests. And so, in a lot of ways, it's like college. You've got classes, you've got your schedule to keep, you've got your tests and papers. You're all living in a dormitory, but on top of that, or sort of woven throughout that, there's this life of prayer, of mass, of other formational activities. Often there's a pastoral element. You have something's been assigned to you. You go work at the nursing home, or you go teach a little bit on the weekends. And so throughout, while you're studying theology and philosophy, you're also developing personal skills and human relationships that help to grow as a man and be prepared for all that the priesthood entails.
Mm-hmm. So Deacon Falk, he mentioned formation, just in a general sense that we enter into seminary to be shaped, to be made into a priest of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. That we don't go ready for that. And the church gives us kind of 4 areas of focus for that formation: spiritual formation, human formation, intellectual, academic formation, and pastoral formation. Maybe just speak a little bit about the first 2, the spiritual and the human. What is the church trying to do as it forms priests in a spiritual way and in a human way?
Well, I think in the seminary they're trying to take the whole person and form him into a holy priest. Because in order to be a priest, to be a holy priest, you bring your whole personage into it. And so that foundation of a human formation, as grace builds upon nature, very much the spiritual formation builds upon and is rooted in the human person. And so there's been a tremendous, especially with some of the social sciences, etc., a greater development of an understanding of the human person as such. And so form that person to be all that he can be, so that that nature that grace builds upon is as healthy and vibrant as it can be. You don't stuff the human person and all the human drives and passions aside. Just the opposite. You bring that to the forefront as a springboard into the ministry that grows into the spiritual, and the spiritual is the grace, so to speak, coming from above, that infuses and forms the person and drawing him more intimately in union with Christ into that holiness, so that he can be a better shepherd and guide to the people, knowing his own humanity, knowing the grace and love of God, wedding the 2 together quite beautifully to be a shepherd of souls.
Right. So if we might see the spiritual and the human as the foundation of formation, maybe talk a little bit about 2 other very important aspects of formation, and with intellectual or the study part, that leads to the ultimate goal of pastoral formation, that we are being formed to do something, to bring Christ to the world.
Yeah, well, the seminary comes from the word the seed, so it's a time to grow, and so we certainly grow in all 4 of those areas. The part that might be easiest to perceive is the academic, because we go through classes, we get grades just like regular college, and so it's easy to focus on that, and that's a crucial part of our formation, that we truly understand the scriptures, we understand Christ, understand what the church teaches, and that we take that, the fullness of the church's truth, to the people, the fullness of Christ. And so that kind of movement towards ministry is what seminary is all about. It's about forming priests. And so the pastoral dimension is hugely important, that we can bring this to people, that we can sit with people in pain. We have times that we do hospital ministry, lots of homeless ministry, prison ministry, lots of different opportunities, teaching in schools and with children, to kind of understand how do we bring the gospel to the world. And so that's an important part of forming any future priest. Sure. That as we come out, we're ready and capable and have the skills as well as the knowledge to bring that.
So it sounds like a time of great blessing, a time of great grace. So as you have now completed that time, what will you miss most about seminary? As you have now, obviously you go to seminary to finish, there's a purpose to it. It's not it's not an end in itself. But as you come to the end of your time, what do you think you're going to miss most, Deacon Albert?
I think I'll miss the ready access to a sense of community. It's just, you live in this dormitory style. You're right down the hall. You just go knock on your neighbor's door and hey, let's go do something. Let's go play a game of cards. Let's hang out. Let's catch up. We have lots of activities that go on, games and sports that we play together. So there's a real growth in the sense of community and brotherhood. That as a priest, you have that brotherhood, but it's more distant. You're spread out across parishes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you could be a couple of miles or several miles away from the next priest, and so that community aspect is going to be different. So it's going to take some getting used to, I think.
Yeah. Yourself, Deacon Falk, some things that you're going to miss after your long journey. Hopefully, you won't be missing hospital beds. And
Yeah, I
those
won't be
kind of things.
in the hospitals. But kind of building on what Deacon Alex said, that there's the sense of community and fraternity of a bunch of guys living, praying, and studying together, and that opportunity to be really wholly invested in the study of the faith, the true understanding of leisure for the sake of prayer and contemplation. It's kind of a honeymoon time of spending time with your spouse, where it's just the two of you. The seminary has that kind of aspect. With ministry, you get tugged in so many different directions. It gets hard to find time to really spend time in quality prayer and study, and you're not with your brothers as often. So it's to have that intensified time period, I think, is what I'll miss the most.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in addition that you're going to miss?
Yeah, certainly the fraternity, as my brothers have said. I think also seminary has a set schedule. You know, you live your day, you know when your classes are going to be, you know when your meals will be, when you can get your prayer time in, your exercise in, kind of all of those things. And so there's a structure to that the parish priesthood is certainly not that. And it's both, it's big change, but it's also very exciting that at any moment you're going to have people coming, needing this, asking for that. Every week your schedule will look different every day. So there's an excitement there, but it's also a real change from an academic type of schedule.
Yeah. I know that at Notre Dame you have the opportunity to pursue a Master of Arts degree if you choose to write a thesis on a particular theological topic, and I know that two of you have decided to do that. So I'd like to hear just a little bit about what you've chosen to do for that MA thesis, Deacon Albert.
Sure. I mean, now I spent a year writing it and an hour and a half defending it, but to sum it up, I guess, I mean, the title is Extending the Kingdom of Heaven, Liturgical Blessings as Relationship. Right? So I looked at that action of when a priest blesses someone, when he blesses something, when we celebrate this ritual that we call a blessing, what is taking place, right? I didn't want to get into the technical aspects of the ritual itself, but what is going on at the essence. And it boiled down to there's a relationship being established there. It's a sign of favor from the minister who's acting on behalf of God and the church. It's a sign of favor to the person or thing being blessed. And it's a way of saying, we're going to relate to you. We're going to draw you into our own experience to care for you. So that's through prayer and through asking for God's protection. And it's sort of rooted in this covenant that runs through all salvation history. So it's really kind of, in some ways, it's like the church claiming territory for the kingdom of heaven and recruiting.
Right.
And it's drawing you closer into that kingdom.
Yeah. It's something that we hear about all the time. We bless ourselves, we receive the blessing at the end of Mass, but to focus a little bit more about what is actually happening there, it's certainly a nice contribution. So, and Deacon Richard, you did a thesis as well. Can you share a little bit about that?
My thesis is historical theology, and I focus on this diocese, on Bishop Jean Mard, and specifically on his ministry towards Black Catholics. And what I found was truly remarkable. I think probably most people watching, I myself grew up in Breaux Bridge and towns all over Acadiana. We have a white church and a black church, and just kind of what you grow up with, what you're used to. And so I began to kind of look into that and how did this come about? And it's really all pre-civil rights, the work of Bishop Jean Mard. And compared to any other bishop in the country, he was well ahead of his time in his ministry to Black Catholics and what he did. And so I looked at the beginnings of the diocese, the beginnings of Bishop Jean Mard, but also all the things that he did through the time when we had very little money, the money he raised from St. Catherine Drexel, from different boards around the country to form all these parishes. And he created 31 Black parishes in his time here. And so this whole diocese obviously is formed by Jean Mard. Yeah. He was bishop for our first 38 years. But specifically that aspect of his ministry, it sets us apart from really any other diocese in the country. Right. And I think the result of that is we have a much stronger Black Catholic community, a stronger community here because of his work and all that he did. And there's many different instances throughout his time that I found going through the archives here at the diocese, just kind of flipping through things and seeing. I learned a lot about this diocese and about this bishop. Truly a remarkable man, had a remarkable care for souls. Yeah. And he said, there's no difference, right, between a black soul and a white soul, so they deserve all of our care. and all of the support that we would give any other parish. And without the money, he made that happen.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful reflection on his ministry, and kind of how that can even relate to our times.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Appreciate y'all efforts in that. I think it's a great contribution to our local church. Before we talk about the ordination itself, I'd like to kind of bring it back to the basics and talk a little bit about priesthood, right? What is it that you've been pursuing all these years? What is it that you're about to receive and live out? Just in a general sense, what is a priest? What is it that God is about to make you into?
I think kind of pulling off what Pope John Paul II had said, that simple definition of being a priest is a man for others. I remember it was a point of reflection in coming into seminary, back into seminary. What is it about being a priest? Why do you want to be a priest? And for me, the priesthood is about a call to share in the cross of Christ, a call to share, to suffer and sacrifice and die with Christ, and for His people. And so flowing out of a love for Christ and out of a love for His people, that the priest is a servant of Christ in the gospel and the church, who gives his whole life for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of the salvation of souls, which means their sanctity and their living fully alive the life of faith in Christ and with Christ within the church. And he is at service to that joyfully because of his own experience of that, and his love for God and his love for the church and his love for souls to want to share that with him.
Well, I think it's providential that you're all going to be ordained priests during this extraordinary year of mercy, right? So this theme of mercy is definitely the heart of what a priest is called to do, called to bring about. Just some thoughts about that. Has that been a focus of your prayer as you approach ordination? What does that mean to you?
There's a lot of depth to that. It is the year of mercy, and mercy is that form that love takes when it looks to the suffering and to the sinner. And God is love, and He looks at us and He sees us in our trials and in our weakness and our sinfulness, and He just pours out His mercy upon us. And Pope Francis has led the charge of let's bring that mercy out into the streets, out into every corner of the world, and it has been sort of an exhortation to me. It's a reminder of the real essence of why I became a priest. I didn't become a priest for my own benefit. I became a priest to bring that mercy to others. A priest offers sacrifice and forgives sins. Right? I offer sacrifice for the people who I'm also forgiving in the confessional. And so this, it's just there's so much to say. It's hard to say anything.
Right. Would you add anything? Since he's at a loss for words. It's a rare occasion, so there's an opportunity.
I do think that there's a true beauty in this year of mercy to have this focus that we're getting from the church over and over on what it is to be merciful and what it is to see the Father as merciful. And so I think looking at the priesthood through that lens, the call that God's placed on my own heart, how is He calling me to live out that mercy? And obviously through the priest come the great sacraments of reconciliation and anointing. I can remember back to my first summer as a seminarian, one of the biggest moments for me to really think, I think the priesthood might be for me was 2 house calls we did for anointing of the sick, and to see these 2 patients on hospice with their families gathered around, waiting for the priest to come. Yeah. And the beauty of it was just a fly on the wall, but to see the priest in that situation to bring the sacraments, to bring that comfort to these people. And so it's a beautiful ministry of the priest, a beautiful ministry of the church that the Lord has given us.
Yeah. Well, for a lot of people, they never have the opportunity to go to an ordination, right? So they will never make it to the cathedral. Sure. What happens at ordination? What are some of the signs that you receive all of those realities that a priest is, the mission of the priest, all of those things? What actually happens during the ritual of ordination of holy orders specifically to priesthood?
I think kind of the most preeminent image for most people is kind of the laying on of hands. And this, of course, goes back to apostolic times. We see it in the scriptures. Through the laying on of hands, which is, I think, very beautiful, the idea of the physical contact, that there is a consecration, that you are set apart, that you are no longer your own, you're no longer for yourself, but that you are made sacred, set apart for this service specifically. And I think that becomes one of the very positive, very beautiful and rich and enduring symbols of what's taking place in the transformation of this person in the very depths of his being, that you're no longer Joel Falk, you are now Father Joel Falk, that you are now set apart, consecrated for the sake of this particular vocation, this mission. And it is a great blessing, a great honor that, coming back to mercy, that mercy being the love that we don't deserve, the vocation we receive that we don't deserve, and it is a tremendous blessing.
And one of the signs of that consecration after the laying on of hands is the putting on of the priestly vestments. And maybe you can each mention who you have chosen, what priest you have chosen to do that as an ordained priest.
For me, I've chosen Father Pat Watney from the Archdiocese of New Orleans, who was the chaplain at Archbishop Romo High School, where I was teaching for the 4 years before coming back into seminary. There's been many priests along the way who have had a very important role in my own formation and journey. And he was the one kind of closest those last few years before coming in. Very much a good priest, a good friend, mentor, kind of several roles, because I'd already had one foot in seminary, one foot out. And so during those years when I was wrestling with coming back into seminary, he gave just the right balance, and just a very compassionate, very loving man, gentle soul, and a good pastor as well.
Deacon Richard?
Yes, I've chosen Father Blanda, who is the pastor at St. Peter's in New Iberia. I started my seminary journey with him. My very first assignment was to St. Mary Magdalene in Abbeville with him, and it was a great formative summer for me. And then my very last assignment as a deacon intern was at St. Peter's in New Iberia, so he's been a true mentor.
Right. All right, great. Deacon Albert?
I've chosen Father Michael Champagne, who's been my spiritual director for the latter half of my time in seminary, and sort of helping me to grow in the spiritual life and what it means to pray and live as a priest.
Great. Well, we know that all of these years of formation are for a purpose, to be assigned to a parish to serve the people. And you've received your assignments very recently. Maybe you can tell us about how you received that assignment, what form that took, what were you thinking, what were you feeling, and where it is that you are assigned.
Sure. Yeah, you get a phone call from the bishop. You know it might be coming the next couple of days, and sure enough, I was just driving and got a phone call from the bishop himself, and he said, "Here's where I'd like you to go." And so I said, "Well, I'm happy to go there." Very exciting and exciting to find out after all these years of formation where you'll begin your ministry. And I'll begin at St. Mary Magdalene in Abbeville, which is again where I started as a seminarian. Very much looking forward.
Right.
I'm going to be at St. Pius X here in Lafayette with Father Steve LeBlanc, who was the pastor at Wisdom on U.S. campus when I first started in college, my first year. Another Abbeville connection there. So it'll be good to reconnect with him.
And how was it that you came to know your assignment?
The bishop gave me a call. I was actually meeting a friend at the public library in Abbeville to go look for a new phone, because mine kept dying and dropping calls like crazy. So I was waiting as the bishop told me my assignment, for it to just drop his call. I guess he doesn't like that assignment, but thankfully it held out through that. But that's when he had called me.
Right.
So
Nice.
I was shopping for a car, and my car had given me some trouble. So we were shopping. I was in a test drive with my dad, and I get a phone call, and I'm looking at the cell phone, unknown number, and I remembered, well, it's not too long ago that I know that it had been discussed where they're going to send us. So I said, oh, well, I better answer this. This might be the bishop. I answer the phone, and, hello, is this Deacon Alexander Albert? Yes, it is. This is Bishop J. Douglas Desitello, Lafayette. Oh, hi, Bishop. How are you? And so I would like you to go to St. Peter in New Iberia, where Father Blanda is currently the pastor. And I said, I'm glad to do it, Bishop, and I appreciate the appointment. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. It is an amazing thing how that phone call can change the circumstances of your life pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's happened to me 5 times so far in the last 11 years. So look forward to more of that.
More phone calls to come.
yeah.
Absolutely. So we have just about a minute left. Very quick last word, maybe to the people of Acadiana as you are beginning your priesthood, each of you.
I think certainly a word of thanks. It's incredible how much the people in this diocese pray for vocations, and how much I've felt those prayers, how much so many people from my hometown have come up to me and let me know they're supporting me and praying for me. And I think it's really important and very helpful along the way.
Yeah. I very much echo that, a sense of gratitude to the people of Acadiana, because our vocations really kind of take flight on the wings of their prayers. And it is such a privilege and honor to be able to become a priest, not just for Christ and His church, but specifically for this diocese, for which we have such great love.
Mm-hmm.
I, of course, want to echo that gratitude. And there's 3 messages I want to convey: that God loves you, I love you, and it is possible to love Him back and grow in holiness.
Beautiful. And we have such great hope for the future of our local church. So look forward to spending, hopefully, God willing, many years of priestly ministry as co-workers with all of y'all. So we thank you for joining us this morning, and continue to pray for these new priests and all of our seminarians. May God bless.